The raccoon that comes to your yard has not always felt safe there. The first night she appeared, she did not come because your yard was safe. She came because she was hungry and your yard had something worth the risk. She moved through it quickly, she ate fast, she left faster. She kept her body close to the fence line, kept one ear turned toward the house at all times, flinched at every sound from the street, every light from a passing car, every creak of the house settling in the night air. She was not comfortable, she was calculating, weighing the value of what your yard offered against the cost of the exposure required to get it. And then slowly, across many nights and many visits, something changed. Not all at once, not on any single night you could point to, but gradually across weeks and seasons and hundreds of small moments of arriving and eating and leaving without anything bad happening, the calculation began to shift. The risk assessment changed, the behavior changed. And the raccoon that moves through your yard tonight, the one who takes her time, who sits and eats in the open, who does not flinch when the house makes its sounds, is a fundamentally different animal from the one who showed up hungry and frightened on that first night. She has decided your yard is safe. And tonight, for the first time, you are going to understand exactly what that decision looks like and what it means that she made it. Welcome back to Hidden Backyard Wildlife, the channel where we sit with the small wild lives that share our yards and try to understand what they understand about the world. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe before this video is over, because what you are about to learn is going to permanently change the way you watch the raccoon in your yard, because you will finally understand that what looks like boldness is actually something far more interesting than that. Today we are walking through 8 things raccoons do when they decide your yard is safe, what each of those behavioral changes tells us about how their minds work, and why the specific animal that has been visiting your property has been making a decision about you, about your specific yard, your specific presence, your specific behavior, that most people who live next to raccoons never know is happening. Stay with me from beginning to end because behavior number 6 is the one that researchers did not anticipate. And the final one, number 8, is the one I think will stay with you the longest, especially the next time you watch a raccoon do something in your yard that surprises you with how comfortable it seems. The first and most visible sign that a raccoon has decided your yard is safe is the one that most people misread entirely. She slows down. Not because she has become lazy, not because she has grown comfortable in the way that produces carelessness, but because the specific constant exhausting vigilance that characterized her early visits, the head constantly up, the eating in short frantic bursts, the body always positioned for immediate flight has been replaced by something more measured, more deliberate, a pace that reflects the updated calculation her brain has made about this specific environment. Researchers studying habituation in urban raccoons have documented that the transition from high vigilance foraging behavior to lower vigilance foraging behavior in a specific territory occurs gradually across multiple visits, and that the reduction in vigilance is location-specific, meaning the raccoon shows reduced vigilance in the familiar yard while maintaining full vigilance in unfamiliar spaces even on the same night. She is not less alert in general, she is less alert here specifically. She has sorted your yard into a category that permits a different quality of attention, not inattention, but the kind of functional, sustainable awareness that allows the eating and the watching to happen simultaneously rather than in short, alternating, exhausted bursts. If you have watched a raccoon that used to eat quickly and leave now spending 10 minutes in one spot, calmly working through a food source, you were watching a trust decision made visible in the pace of an animal. She slowed down because she decided your yard was worth slowing down in. That is not a small thing, that took her longer than you know. In the first weeks of a raccoon's visits to a new property, the timing of those visits tends toward the deep night hours, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., the hours when human activity in residential areas drops to its lowest, the hours that offer maximum cover of darkness and minimum likelihood of human encounter. As the raccoon decides the yard is safe, the timing of her visits shifts. Earlier, researchers studying the temporal patterns of raccoon activity in suburban environments have found that as raccoons habituate to specific properties, their visit timing shifts progressively earlier in the night, moving from deep nocturnal hours toward the early evening hours as the animal's risk assessment of the property decreases. In some well-habituated cases, raccoon visits begin before full dark has settled. She comes earlier because the darkness is no longer the primary safety mechanism she relies on when visiting your yard. In the early visits, darkness was essential, it was the cover that made the risk manageable. As the yard became known, as the risk assessment changed, the darkness became less necessary. The safety was not in the dark anymore. The safety was in the yard itself. If you have noticed a raccoon appearing at your property in the evening, earlier than you would expect a raccoon to be active, you are watching the result of a sustained risk assessment that has concluded over many visits that this particular yard is safe enough to approach before the full cover of night. She does not need the dark to protect her here anymore. You built her something better than darkness. You built her familiarity. Early visit raccoon behavior at a food source is recognizable. She finds the food, takes a portion, retreats to cover, the fence line, the base of a shrub, the shadow of the deck, eats the portion quickly, returns for more, retreats again. She is never more than a second from cover. The open ground between her and safety is always minimized. When she decides your yard is safe, she stops retreating. She eats in the open, sitting in the middle of your lawn if that is where the food is, not pressed against the fence, not under the shrub, not in the shadows. In the open, under whatever light the night offers, eating at her own pace in the place where she found the food. Researchers studying foraging site selection in urban raccoons have found that raccoons preferentially select feeding sites in or adjacent to cover when in unfamiliar territory, but shift to open ground foraging in familiar territory where the risk assessment has been lowered through repeated positive experience. The willingness to forage in the open is a direct behavioral expression of perceived safety. To eat in the open is to be vulnerable. A raccoon eating in the open has accepted a level of exposure that she would not accept in a space she does not trust. The exposed position says, I have run the calculation on this yard and the answer is that I do not need the cover. If you have a raccoon that eats in the middle of your lawn in the open calmly without the constant retreat to cover, your yard has been assessed and found safe. Not just tolerated, safe. She would not be standing there in the open if the numbers did not come out that way. This is the one that changes the nature of the raccoon's relationship with your yard most completely. When a raccoon decides a yard is safe, she does not keep that assessment to herself. She brings her kits. The decision to bring juveniles to a foraging site is, for a female raccoon, the most significant trust decision she makes about any location. Her kits are the most vulnerable thing in her world, slow-moving, inexperienced, unable to read threat cues or execute escape behaviors with adult competence. Bringing them to a location is a statement made in behavior rather than language, that the location has been assessed as having the necessary margin of safety to accommodate vulnerability. Researchers studying maternal behavior and habitat use in urban raccoons have found that female raccoons with dependent young show significantly more conservative foraging site selection than non-breeding females, visiting only the sites that have been most thoroughly habituated, most consistently positive, and most reliably safe across the longest assessment period. If a raccoon has brought her kits to your yard has passed a more stringent safety assessment than most properties she visits. The casual locations, the ones that are merely tolerated, do not see the kits. The kits come only to the places she trusts most completely. The night you first see a raccoon family in your yard, a mother with 2 or 3 small dark shapes tumbling alongside her, is the night you understand that your yard has achieved something. Not a pest problem. A certification. The most rigorous safety certification a raccoon mother can issue has been issued to your property. She trusted your yard with the most important things in her world. There is a particular quality of curiosity that emerges in a raccoon that has decided a space is safe, a quality that is entirely absent in the early visits, and that marks the transition from tolerance to genuine comfort more clearly than almost any other behavioral indicator. She begins to investigate. Not foraging investigation, she knows where the food is, something else. The deck railing examined with both paws, not because it might contain food but because it is there and she is curious about it. The garden ornament sniffed and turned over. The hose reel rolled experimentally. The porch chair climbed onto and sat in for a moment. Objects in the yard explored not for their utility but for their interest. Researchers studying exploratory behavior in raccoons have found that raccoon exploration, the handling and manipulation of objects that serve no immediate survival function, is significantly suppressed in novel or threatening environments and expressed most freely in safe, familiar, low-stress environments. The raccoon's famous manual dexterity and object curiosity are not expressed under stress. They emerge when the animal feels safe. The raccoon that is playing with your garden hose or sitting in your porch chair or turning over stones near the garden bed is not a nuisance. She is a raccoon who has been made comfortable enough to be herself, curious, dexterous, exploratory, in a space that has earned her ease. You have never seen a frightened raccoon investigate a garden ornament with both paws. Fear suppresses curiosity completely. What you are watching when you see the exploratory raccoon in your yard is a creature that has been given the safety to be interesting. This is the one researchers did not anticipate, and the one that changes everything about how we think about what a raccoon's yard safety decision actually is. When researchers assumed raccoons were habituating to yards generally, to the environment, the food sources, the absence of threats, the assumption was that the safety assessment was spatial, about the place. It turned out to be partly personal. Researchers studying raccoon habituation in residential environments found that the behavioral changes associated with yard safety decisions, the reduced vigilance, the earlier arrival, the open foraging, the kid introduction showed differential expression depending on which human was present. Raccoons that showed low vigilance in a yard when the familiar household member was present would show elevated vigilance when an unfamiliar person was in the same yard under the same conditions. The safety assessment was not just about the yard, it was about the yard with you in it. She has not decided your yard is safe. She has decided your yard with you in it is safe. The distinction is not small. It means that the thing she has learned to trust is not just a location but a location plus a specific human whose consistent, predictable, non-threatening behavior has been woven into the safety assessment of the place. When you are at the window and she is in the yard, her vigilance is lower than when a stranger stands at the same window. She knows the difference. She has always known the difference. And the safety she feels in your yard is partly a safety she feels because of you, because your particular, consistent, reliable way of being present in this space has become part of what safe means in this place. She did not just learn your yard, she learned your yard because you are in it. The visit duration of a raccoon at a newly discovered property follows a predictable pattern: arrive, assess, eat quickly, leave. The time from arrival to departure is short. The risk of extended exposure in an unknown space is not worth it regardless of what the space contains. When a raccoon has decided a yard is safe, the visits get longer. Not because there is more food, not because the nights are shorter, because the calculation of how long it is worth staying has changed. The cost of remaining in the space, the risk, the vigilance demand, the exposure has decreased. And when the cost decreases, the animal can afford more time in the space. Researchers studying temporal patterns of raccoon foraging at habituated versus non-habituated sites have found that visit duration increases significantly as habituation progresses, with raccoons spending 2 to 3 times longer at familiar, habituated sites compared to sites of equivalent food value where habituation has not occurred. She stays longer because it no longer costs her as much to stay. Because the vigilance tax, the mental and physical energy required to maintain the constant awareness that an unsafe space demands has been reduced to a level that allows her to stay without exhausting herself. If you have noticed the raccoon in your yard staying later into the night than she used to, spending more time, leaving more reluctantly, you have noticed the invisible cost decreasing. She is not paying the same price to be in your yard that she used to pay. Something in this yard has made the staying cheaper. That something is the accumulated evidence that staying here is worth it, that staying here is safe, that you and your yard have together produced enough repeated positive outcomes to justify the investment of time that she is now making. I have saved this one for last, because it is the one I think will stay with you the longest. The final and most complete expression of a raccoon's decision that your yard is safe is the one that has nothing to do with food. She comes back when there is nothing there. Not to forage, not because the garbage can has food or the compost bin has been left unsecured or the bird feeder has been knocked over. She comes back to a yard that has been cleared of every obvious food source and she walks through it anyway. She sits in it for a while, she investigates the familiar objects, she occupies the space. Researchers studying site fidelity in urban raccoons have noted a behavioral pattern in highly habituated animals: returns to familiar sites that cannot be explained by food availability alone, where the animal's behavior at the site is not foraging behavior but something closer to what would be described in another context as simply being somewhere comfortable, being in a familiar place. returning to a space that has been established as safe and remaining in it for no survival reason beyond the fact that it is known and trusted and associated with the particular ease that trusted places produce. She comes back to your yard because your yard has become something in her world that goes beyond its utility. It has become a known place, a safe place, one of the small number of locations in her nightly range where the vigilance can drop to its lowest, where the cost of being present is lowest, where the accumulated positive experience of many nights has produced something that functions, in the behavioral vocabulary of a raccoon, like comfort. She is not coming for the food tonight. She is coming because this is one of the places she trusts, and there are not many of those. Not in a life that is lived in the dark, always calculating, always weighing risk against return, always one wrong assessment away from a consequence that cannot be undone. There are not many safe places in a raccoon's world. Your yard, if she keeps coming back to it without obvious reason, is one of them. And the thing that made it safe is not the garbage can or the compost bin or the bird feeder. Those are what brought her in the first place. What made it safe is every night she came and nothing bad happened. Every time the house made its sounds and she learned they were harmless. Every time she ate in the open and was not threatened. Every time she brought her kits and the space held them safely. Every time she investigated your garden ornaments and the world stayed quiet around her. Every ordinary night in your yard was a data point, and the data, accumulated across months and seasons, came to the same conclusion: this place is safe. That is not a story about raccoons deciding yards are safe. That is a story about what trust looks like when it is built slowly from evidence in the dark by something that could not afford to be wrong. She decided your yard was safe because you gave her enough nights without anything bad happening to reach that conclusion. And she keeps coming back. That is what trust looks like from the outside. Returned to, chosen again, without obvious reason, just because it is the place that has never let her down. Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Has a raccoon ever done something in your yard that surprised you with how comfortable it seemed, sat somewhere openly, investigated something with obvious curiosity, stayed far longer than you expected, brought her young ones with her? Tell me about it. What did it do? What did it feel like to watch an animal be that comfortable in the space you live in? The stories this hidden backyard wildlife community shares are some of the most extraordinary I read every week, and every single one of them matters. If anything in this video changed the way you watch the raccoon that moves through your yard in the dark, share it with someone who would understand. Sometimes the right perspective at the right moment changes what we notice for the rest of our lives. Thank you for being here at Hidden Backyard Wildlife. Tonight, if you hear something in the yard, something moving slowly, something staying, something that sounds like it is in no particular hurry to leave, that is not a pest problem. That is trust expressed in the only language available to it. She decided your yard was safe, and she keeps deciding it every night she comes back. I will see you in the next one.